Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dropping the Gloves. I am John Scott, your host. Thank you for joining us here. It is August 11. It's a late one again. I was talking to my wife, put the kids to bed. She's like, "Where the heck are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the studio, babe. This is the new normal." I enjoy the Monday night recordings. I think it's peaceful. I think it's just a cathartic thing for me to do. I come in here, I have a couple glasses of whiskey, I can relax a little bit. She's like, "But you're going to be tired." I said, "Woman, don't worry about me." I didn't say that. I said, "I'll be fine. Don't worry about that. You go to bed. I'll be home soon." And here I am at my office enjoying a cup of Crown Royal's finest and about to break down my former team, the New York Rangers, the Blue Shirts. It's going to be a fun one. And, I've done a couple of these breakdowns. We did the Bruins. We've done the Sharks, I believe. We've done a couple other teams. Go back 10, 15 years. I'm going to try to keep this one recent. I'm going to try to keep this one in the Chris Drury era because the Rangers are just one of the most confusing teams to wrap your head around. You have such high expectations and they let you down. And so you lower the bar and then they knock you out of the park. And they're just like, who is this team? Are you a contender or are you a pretender? What the hell are you doing? Who are your players, Panarin? Are you a superstar or are you a dud who just disappears in the playoffs? Shesterkin, are you the best goalie on the planet? He is. He's one of the best goalies on the planet. He's that guy. So this team is just very it's a very difficult team to wrap your head around. I don't know. So we're going to try to break into that, try to figure out who are these New York Rangers? What can we expect from them this year and from years to come? And has honestly, Chris Drury, has he done a good job in his tenure as GM of the New York Rangers? Some think yes, some think no. So we'll dig into all that. But first, I got some bad news, and some of you are gonna take this hard. It's been a tough couple months for the show. Obviously, we lost him. God rest his soul. I wonder if he's married. He might be. I have a chicken update. It's tough. It's not good. So my daughters, they went to re-up the food and the water this past week, and they approached the coop, and what they saw was another traumatizing experience. They've had possums, they've had foxes, they've had neighbors' dogs, they've had what else have they had? Just everything. Raccoons. This one it took the cake. My oldest and one of my youngest, Ava and Lillian, were going to do the chickens, get the eggs and all that fun stuff. And they look in the coop, and this is how they explained it to me. They said there was a massive, massive bird eating one of the chickens. And they approached the coop, and the big bird just stared at them. And they didn't know what to do, so they just ran home. Rightfully so. Big birds, maybe not afraid of a little girl, could have attacked the kids. I said, "Great job. Don't worry about what happened." I get a call saying, "Something's going on. You need to get over here." So I dropped everything, went over there. I'm approaching the coop, and what do I see up in the tree above my chicken's little run is a massive bird sitting there. It must have heard me coming in my car and flown up and perched itself on a branch up above and was just waiting for me to either drive by, just to go away so it continue its feast. I close the door, I run to the coop, and the bird flies away. I'm not kidding you when I say the wingspan must have been 10 feet across. If it wasn't 10 feet across, it was 20. It was a huge bird. And so I immediately get on my phone trying to figure out what kind of bird this is. And I'm pretty sure it was a red-tailed hawk. Very common in Michigan, very common in North America, common in these wooded areas. And my goodness, it was majestic flying away. Like a beautiful thing. Absolutely beautiful. I go in the coop, the chicken's laying there, and I won't get too graphic, but it's been torn to shreds. Not totally. I interrupted the meal, I think, of the chicken, but it was he wasn't hungry. I'll just say that flying away. He was full because the chicken had been worked over. It'd been picked apart. But anyways, I take up the carcass, I throw it away, and I start to think like, how the hell did this bird get into this coop? Because I try to be responsible. I had a netting over the whole coop, the whole run, except for two spots. And this hawk must have flown down and dive bombed to where this hole was. And I'm kidding you, the hole must have been 3 feet in diameter. Not a big hole. For a 20-foot bird to glide through that hole, it's amazing. So I spent the next 25 minutes fortifying the coop again, tying up the holes. Everything's good. The chickens won't come out of their coop. They're traumatized, rightfully so. So I'm babying them the next few days. I'm like, come on, you guys, let's go, let's get out. I'm trying to give them treats and stuff. So finally, they make their way out of the coop, and I'm trying to fix up the little house. I'm not going to bore you any more than I am, but I'm just driving by this coop, I think 2 days later, and the chickens finally made their way out of their coop into the run, and I see an effing skunk in the run with the chickens, and the chickens aren't really, they don't care about the skunk, and the skunk's just walking around between the chickens, and I'm just driving by. I slam on the brakes, I run out, and I start screaming at this skunk. And finally, reality hits me. This is a damn skunk. It's going to spray you. Luckily, the skunk was scared of me and ran away. And I saw where it ran out. It slid under a little hole underneath my fence, which got washed away because we got those torrential rains. So I had to fortify the fence again because there was a skunk in the coop. So it's just like trains, planes, and automobiles are just going after my poor chickens. Everything in their brother is just trying to just take down my beloved chickens. And then to put the cherry on top, I go to my buddy's house and his chickens. He's got a coop. It's the crappiest chicken fence around this coop. Nothing on the top. He's got 10 chickens. No trees overhead for coverage for birds to see them. Nothing. And I'm like, do you ever have any issues? Like, oh no, nothing touches our chickens. I don't get it. I don't get it. Why my chickens are targets? I really, really don't. But all that aside, it's they're still laying eggs. So like we're doing okay, but boy oh boy, I'm trying to get some more chickens. So if you're in the area and you're selling chickens, hit me up. Papa needs some chickens. So moving on, the New York Rangers. 2 seasons ago, this team won the President's Trophy. Everybody made it to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. 2 wins away from making the Stanley Cup Finals. They lost to the Florida Panthers, the eventual Stanley Cup champions. They were one of the trendy picks to win the Stanley Cup. I myself, I've picked this team many times over the last 5-6 years to win that Stanley Cup. And for those of you who know the last couple of weeks, I need to take a break. I got to take a little sip of. They have been the trendy pick to win the cup. So coming into this last season, I was bullish. I'm like, hell yeah. 2 wins away. 3 of those games went to overtime. 5 of the 6 games were 1-goal games. Like it was a tight series that they lost to the Florida Panthers 2 years ago. So this past season, I'm like, yeah, let's go. And what did they do this past season? One of the biggest tank jobs I've ever seen from a team that should have been a contender. One of just the biggest, just taking a huge steaming pile of dookie on the ice night in and night out. They were inconsistent. They were horrendous in their D zone. They couldn't score goals. They were old. They weren't inspired. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And so they just cleaned house. And Chris Drury did what Chris Drury had to do. And they fired their coach and they traded away everybody and they said, click, reset. So it got me thinking, who the hell are these New York Rangers? Because it feels like we don't know what we're going to get. And so we're going to go back to when Chris Drury started his era, May 5th, 2021. Kind of a strange change of power. It was Chris Gordon. It was Davidson was the president. All of a sudden, the owner came in and just switched it all up. It was very sudden. It was not predicted. It was out of the nowhere, which James Dolan does. He's one of the most eccentric, hateable people on earth. And that's to say it mildly. Everybody has an opinion on him. Most of them are negative, rightfully so. So anyway, he comes in, cleans house, gets rid of John Davidson, gets rid of Gordon, gives Chris Ruby the reins to this franchise, this historic original stick franchise. He hires him as a president. He's the GM. He's like, here you go, Chris. This is your team. And what did Chris Ruby do? He was inheriting a bad team that had been underperforming for years. The current coach, David Quinn, the team didn't buy into his system. And it wasn't like it was a bad team that he was inheriting, Chris Drury. It was a decent team that had good pieces, but did not have a good coach or good management or good leadership. And I've said it for years, the best franchises, it's a top-down structure. Very rarely do you see a sustained good team that has a chaotic management situation, that has an eccentric owner, that has a coach that's just not dependable or not reliable. It always is built upon a solid president, a good GM, a really good coach. And from there, it trickles down to the players and the staff, and everybody's on the same page. And for the New York Rangers, that wasn't the case. The president was fired, the GM was fired, there was constant shuffling around with coaches. Chris Drury was brought in to kind of settle all that down. So he fires David Quinn, obviously. He had to go. I think he'd been there for 4 years. 3 of those years he missed the playoffs, and the team just was struggling. He brings in Gerard Gallant, a player-friendly coach. A coach who can come in and kind of loosey-goosey, maybe help the players, free-flowing type of guy. He brings in Barclay Goodrow. He brings in Ryan Reeves, Jared Tenorti, Patrick Nemeth. Some toughness to go along with this young and talented team, because they still had Panarin. He signed that big deal when he was done with the Hawks. They had Mika Zibanejad, who was great. They were in their prime. Chris Kreider, Jacob Trouba. All of these guys were in the primes of their career, and they were struggling. They were 27 to 30, not the players, but the team. And they had good young players. Because they had struggled for the previous 4 years, 5 years, they had some blue chip prospects. They had some guys that you could build around, like a franchise-altering player, potentially. Adam Fox. We know who Adam Fox is. He is the prototype for what the new generation defenseman should be. He's a puck mover. He's good in his D zone. He's responsible. He's electric. He's energetic. It's exactly what you want to build a franchise around. Alex Lafreniere, power forward, #1 overall. This is the guy who had everything, a generational talent at that time. Oh boy, we got Fox, we got Lafreniere, we got Philip Hedl, drafted a few years before him, a big forward. We got Keandre Miller, the big fleet-footed defenseman. Sky's the limit for him. Cabo Caco, #2 overall. Huge Finn. Rocket for a shot. Responsible defensively. We got Ryan Lindgren, a shutdown D-man. We got Schneider, first round overall pick the same year we got Lafreniere. All of these young guys were just brimming with potential. The future was bright when Chris Drury took over. People were starting to get excited. That year that Drury took over, Adam Fox, did he like what he had with Chris Drury? Put up a Norris caliber season, 74 points, his coming out party as a defenseman. And one of the first things Chris Drury did, he signed Adam Fox. He knew what he had. Boom, right away. Let's sign this guy to a long-term deal. 7-year, 66.5, 9.5 a year. Let's go. I am all in on Adam Fox. Great signing. So you bring in a new coach, you re-sign some guys, you fill them with some toughness. Everything worked. They went from missing the playoffs to all of a sudden, this team could win the Stanley Cup. Like, we're talking new GM, new president, new coach, new system, revamped roster, and you come within 2 wins of winning the Stanley Cup. You lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the conference finals. In your first outing as a GM, all of these young guys in their prime are getting it. Panarin, Zibanejad. This is Panarin's team. This was his team. Zibanejad, he had a coming out party. Kreider scored a ton of goals. Trouba was a nightmare to play against. Fox was a Norris caliber defenseman. Everything worked. And then, of course, when things didn't go well, you had Igor Shesterkin. You had Igor effing Shesterkin, who just solidified himself as one of the greatest goalies on the planet that year. He was lights out. All of the all of the trade deadline trades that Chris Drury did, bringing in Andrew Copp, Frank Vetrano, Justin Braun, Mott from Vancouver, they all were great. They all produced in the playoffs. Everything worked for Chris Drury that first year. So you finish up that year, you're feeling good, right? You're feeling okay if you're the New York Rangers. You're a fan. You're the players. It's like, hell yeah. We almost made the Stanley Cup Finals. The year before, we didn't even make the playoffs. That was it. This is it. We're taking the next step. We're in the upper echelon. Let's go. Well, it didn't work out that way. And this is where, you know, when you do these shows, you want to just rip, right? And you want to like lambaste and get click bait stuff and like have really strong opinions. As a player, I know how hard it is to win. It's very, very difficult. I've been on very good teams with very high expectations. When I was in San Jose, they were coming off a President's Trophy championship. They lost four straight to LA after being up 3-0. So they were pissed off. There was going to be a bounce back year. They made some changes in the offseason. The sky was the limit. We had a great team. We sucked. I was in Chicago. We were coming off a Stanley Cup win. We should have been good. Struggled out of the gate. The next season, we were great. We should have won. Lost in Game 7 to Vancouver. It was just, you can't put it into words how hard it is to win in the NHL. So the New York Rangers, they're coming off one of their best seasons in a decade. Things are looking up after 5 years of just rough play, bad coaching, bad signings, trying to rebuild, and everything clicked in 2021. It's 21-22 should have been great. But then you start to look around and where you are. In the early 2000s, it's only 5 years ago, you guys, but the East was absolutely loaded. We look at the East now and it's strong, but the strength is starting to shift west a little bit. Early 2000s, late 1990s, the East was absolutely murderer's row. That season, the Bruins had the best season in NHL history. The Leafs were right behind them. The Lightning were coming up back-to-back cup championships. The Panthers were starting to figure it out. The Hurricanes were so dangerous. They were first in the Metro. Very, very dangerous. The Devils were all healthy, and they were super dangerous. And the Rangers were young and skilled and energetic and ready to take the next step. But if you're the New York Rangers and you're coming off that conference finals and you look at the playoff seeding, it's like, damn, like really? We're going to either get the Devils or the Hurricanes or a wild card team, which turned out to be the Lightning or Panthers. Like it's a murderer's row in the Eastern Conference. And you can commiserate with the Toronto Maple Leafs because they went through it for years. Whether they're getting the Bruins in the first round or the Lightning in the first round, both of those teams were just unbeatable in the playoffs. So the poor New York Rangers, they get the Devils in the first round. The Devils were very, very good. And they lose in 7 games to the New Jersey Devils. You know, you got great expectations, but with great expectations becomes great responsibility. So you make the conference finals. The next season you fail. What happens? You have to make changes. Not good enough. And good on Chris Drury, he starts to tinker. And he didn't go over the top, but he knew he had it to get better because the East was strong. The West was getting stronger. And if you want to compete and you want to win a Stanley Cup, and that's what I love about Chris Drury, he doesn't just sit there and go, we did good 2 years ago. We're a good team. We have good pieces. Let's just ride it out. Why tinker with this roster? No. He goes out, he signs Vincent Trocheck. A very highly criticized move. Trocheck coming over from Carolina. You gave him too much money. You gave him too much term. 7 years, $39 million, 6.65 per. Is he that guy? Immediately upgraded his second line center. Right away. Vincent Trocheck changed that right away. And the other things that he did, and you see this is what happened in the early 2000s. He re-signed Kaapo Kakko. And you're going to see this as a trend. You re-signed Kakko, you re-signed Chytil, you re-signed Lafreniere, you re-signed Schneider, you re-signed all these draft picks. And and I've said this a long time too, all of their success, all of their hope, all of their championship aspirations, it all rested on the kid line. We need them to progress. We need them to take the next step. And at times they did. But as a whole, I think we can all say it's been a huge failure for those 3 guys, 4 guys, 5 guys. You can put Keandre Miller in that boat. All of their first round draft picks haven't worked out. And when you look at draft picks, we looked at what the Boston Bruins did last week in their draft picks. You need some of them to pan out. You need to hit on some of those draft picks, especially if you're drafting number 1 overall, number 2 overall, in the top 10. You have to get something out of those draft picks. And you can look at the Rangers and you can arguably say that none of their first round draft picks have worked out. None. Based on the output, what they paid them, and how they played in the playoffs in big moments, not so much. Lafreniere's had moments where it's like, damn, he's good. But as a whole, not so good. So coming off that first round loss, expectations are still high. You get Trocheck, you re-sign Kakko, you trade some guys to restock the draft capital because you went in all in the year before, and you traded some first rounders. So you trade away Georgiev, you trade away Nils Lundqvist, you get some first rounders. Good on Chris Drury. You bring in another veteran goalie in Halak. In the season, you trade for Tarasenko, you trade for Niko Mikkola, you trade for Patrick Kane. You're doing all you can to push. It didn't work. It didn't work that season. The players did not play well. It's not Chris Drury's fault. The young guns, like I said, they needed to take the step. It didn't. There were glimpses, but it just did not work. Drury was in an unenviable situation at this point. You have that first taste of a conference final, then you have a failure, and you're trying to do whatever you can to build this team, but it's just not working. And you're saddled with these young players. 2017, you get Filipino. 2018, you get Keandre Miller. 2019, you get Kaapo Kakko. 2020, you get Lafreniere and Schneider. What do? Drury did not draft any of these players. And so you're coming up into this team and you're trying to manage your assets. And the worst thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the worst thing you can do if you're Chris Drury is to walk away from one of these guys and for them to go and just light it up. Like, it would induce nightmares. If something happened, if you just say, okay, Kakko, kick rocks, man, like beat it. I can't keep doing this. And he goes and he just blows up and he becomes a superstar, a shutdown forward who puts up 50, 60 points, or Lafreniere, you just let him go because he hasn't panned out as a number 1 overall pick. And all of a sudden he turns into that guy that you thought he was, that you saw glimpses of in the playoffs or for a month at a time in the regular season. So instead of risking that, you just keep re-signing him. You just give him these bridge deals, 2 years here, 3 years here, and you just kick the can down the road. Maybe he'll figure it out. Maybe he'll get something out of him. And it just keeps happening and happening. And then you look at this roster. They have everything you want. Strong down the middle, solid decor, great goaltending. They have depth if the young guys step up. And again, they're optimistic coming into this offseason. 21, 22 didn't go well. 22, 23, you're optimistic. You fire your coach again. Gerard Gallant, gone. You bring in Peter Laviolette. It's a shift. And this happened when I was playing for the Rangers, but it's the opposite. I was playing for John Tortorella. It was like 2013, I want to say. Another sippy poo. 2013. Torts was the coach. You have a hard-nosed coach. And in 2021-22, Gerard Gallant was a player coach. And so you want to shift the mentality in the locker room. You want to shift the culture. So what do? Instead of bringing in another player coach, you bring in a hard-nosed, disciplined type coach. And that's what they brought in. They brought in Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette comes in, and he immediately changes the culture with the New York Rangers. Gone are the unaccountable forwards who can kind of drift around. Gerard Gallant, and I don't want to throw stones, but not a very good game manager. It seemed at points, especially in the playoffs versus the Devils, where he was just getting outcoached. He was rolling 4 lines when he should have shortened the bench. He would shorten the bench when he should have rolled 4 lines. He was just losing the changing matchup. He wasn't a good game manager. And he didn't hold players accountable. Zibanejad slacking on defense, Panarin not being focused, maybe Fox giving him too much rope, sitting guys down, yelling at guys, maybe calling people out in the media. He didn't do that. And that's why he got fired. So you bring in Peter Laviolette, and boom, he nailed it right out of the gate. And it's so funny. It was a very similar team to the year before. So the old credence of it starts from the top, and you need a solid coach, you need a guy putting players in the right situation. This is exactly what happened here in the New York Rangers. It's true. A good coach changes things so drastically. And it's not like Drury did a ton in the offseason. He just re-signed Lafreniere, re-signed Keandre Miller. Is there an echo in here? Re-signing these young guys to bridge deals, trying to get them to show their potential. We're investing in you. Please show us what you're worth. Get some vets to come in. Jonathan Quick. You get Blake Wheeler, Gustafson, Nick Bonino. During the season, you trade for Jack Roslovic. Nothing major, but they have a great year. All the top guys played solid. Everything went well for the New York Rangers that season. Panarin, lights out. All-star caliber season. 120 points in 82 games. Great. They win the President's Trophy. This is 23-24. Lights out. They make the conference finals again. Lose to the Panthers. So this is it. They get a redo. Much like 2021-22 conference finals, the next year you fail. Now here you are again, 23-24. You make the conference finals, you lose in game 6. You lose to the Panthers, who eventually win the Stanley Cup. 3 overtime games. This is it. This is a redo. We've been here before. We're not gonna fall back again. After that first conference finals, they lost the next year in the first round. This year, not a chance. We're vets. We will learn from our mistakes. The offseason, they go out, they had Sam Carrick. Great signing. Good, solid player. They re-signed Kaapo Kakko. They re-signed Schneider. They re-signed Lindgren. They extend Lafreniere again. Mid-season this time. Big deal. 7 years, $52 million, $8 million per. What happens? What happens? Last year, the New York Rangers. No one really talked about it. Too much. Should have been talked about more. They sucked. That's it. There's no other way to say it. They were absolutely atrocious. Like, historically bad. For a team that won the President's Trophy, everybody, the year before, to not make the playoffs. What more can you say? It's embarrassing. And that's it. And so what happens in the offseason? During the season, before they even get to the offseason. And this is why I sort of love Chris Drury. Because he's like, this team sucks. He's a player. He's been there. He knows when guys are trying. He knows when guys are loafing. He's like, that's it. I'm done. He's desperately trying to trade Mika Zibanejad in his contract. No one's going to take that deal. No one's going to take on a Mika Zibanejad who you can see dogs it in the playoffs the year before. He's $8.5 million for the next 6 seasons, 32 years old and declining. Not a chance. So he starts just picking off players. But before he starts trading guys, the big head scratcher was he brings in JT Miller. Gets rid of Filipino in a first for JT Miller. This is a culture-setting trade for the New York Rangers. JT Miller's 32 years old. Before the trade, he signed an 8-year, $8 million deal. So this is not, a rental. This is not a guy you get for a few years. You're tied to this guy for 8 years now, Chris Drury. JT Miller brings so much to the table other than points because he puts up a lot of points. He holds his team accountable. He will call the best player on the team to the carpet for not playing hard. He did it in Vancouver. He called out Elias Pettersson. That's why he was traded. Chris Drury saw this and he said, hell yeah, I need that. I need that for Panarin. I need that for Zibanejad. I need a guy who can come into this locker room and not be afraid to go, hey, dum-dums, let's go. Pick it up. Not acceptable. Not today. Back check. Play better. JT Miller will do that. And so Chris Drury brought him in. And then he started to trim the fat, baby. Like, let's go. He got rid of Hedel with the JT Miller trade. He said, I'm done re-signing this guy. You're gone. Then he trades Captain Jacob Trouba. I like Trouba. Thought he's a solid player for what he does, but he makes too much money. $8 million. And he amazingly somehow did not retain any salary of Jacob Trouba. He was still due another $8 million. Anaheim takes him. Trades Ryan Lindgren to Colorado. Gets some draft capital. Trades Capo Caco to Seattle. Bye-bye. I'm not re-signing you again. Not going to do that. 1, 2, 3 contracts for you. That's it. No more. Trades Kreider to Anaheim and his contract. Revamps this whole team. Fires coach Peter Laviolette 1 year after taking that team to the conference finals. And that brings us to this season. Chris Drury, this offseason, trying to retool this team because you can't give up on them. You can't all of a sudden say, you know what, we need to rebuild. You have too many good pieces to build around. You still have good young players. Will Cooley, I love Will Cooley. If he was a little younger, I would be floating my daughter's phone number to him. If she was older, I'd be like, hey, I like Will Cooley. I like him a lot. Johnny Brodzinski, I know he's a little older. I like him. You still got Trocheck. You still got Panarin. You got Fox. You have good players. And of course you have Shesterkin, who he signed to a monstrous deal, $11.5 million. We won't really touch on that because you know how I feel about goalies and big contracts. But he deserves it. He's an incredible, incredible goaltender. So it's hard to just press the reset button and rebuild this team when you have those pieces. So what does Chris Drury do in this offseason? He gets rid of all those players. He brings in a new coach in Mike Sullivan, who was there when I played there. So Mike Sullivan is familiar with the organization. He's familiar with what it takes to win in New York. He was there with John Tortorella. He won a couple cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He is a big hire. And the biggest move he makes this offseason is somehow, some way, he trades K'Andre Miller to the Carolina Hurricanes for a first, a second, and a prospect. And then he turns around and he signs Vladislav Gavrikov to a 7-year, $7 million deal. That's insane that he was able to do that. I don't think people realize how good that is. So essentially, he turned K'Andre Miller, who turned around and signed an 8-year, $7.5 million deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. He turned K'Andre Miller into Gavrikov, a first, a second, and a prospect, Scott Moreau, who could potentially crack the lineup this year for the New York Rangers. He's a good right shot defenseman who's got some high upside talent. That's crazy. K'Andre Miller, and I'm going to be kind here because he's still relatively young and he's got a high ceiling. Last year was garbage. Ask any Rangers fan, ask any Rangers player. The guy turns the puck over all the time. He is lost in the defensive zone. He is completely uncoachable from my standpoint. He makes mistakes left, right, and center. He gets lost in the defensive zone. He gets out of position all the time. You can't play him versus the other team's top line. You can't play him versus the other team's second line because he can't do it. And then you can't play him versus the third and fourth line because he gets jittery when he gets pressured and he turns the puck over. So who the hell can you play him against? Chris Drury was able to trade him to the usually stingy and reserved Carolina Hurricanes for a first and a second and a prospect, and he uses the money that he saved to sign Gavrikov, who is an incredible defenseman, who will slot right beside Adam Fox. And by the way, Adam Fox, when he had a good stay-at-home defenseman who wasn't banged up in Ryan Lindgren, they were one of the top D pairings in the league for a good stretch of time. And Gavrikov is a massive upgrade on Ryan Lindgren. Adam Fox will be paired with him. They will play 25 minutes a game, and they will be very, very good. They will be darn right scary to play against. Gavrikov will be that security blanket. Fox will be able to roam. And Fox is a good defensive defenseman too. Don't get me wrong. He's been top 10 in block shots. He doesn't make too many mistakes. He's very conservative when it comes to the first pass out of his own zone. So it's not like he's a rocket ship up and like Lane Hudson was this year. Fox is a good defenseman. So this is a very scary pairing for the New York Rangers. I like this. And you have a coach who knows how to deploy them in Mike Sullivan. So this is a great move by Chris Drury. So this is in the span of 2 years, this team goes from conference finals, having good vets, having solid young forwards, to just jettisoning gone are Barclay Goodrow and Kakko and Hedel and Trouba and Kreider and Miller and Lindgren. You bring in good, hard, solid players to replace those guys. You get JT Miller, you get Gavrikov, you motivate maybe a Panarin who's on the last year of his deal. You still have to deal with some issues with a Zibanejad. You have a solid centerman and Trocheck to be the second line center. This is a good team. This team could make some noise this season. They have the ingredients to be a really, really solid contender. But that's what the New York Rangers are. They are an up and down, cyclical team that can't seem to figure it out. When you look at the head coaches they've had since Torts, it's been a revolving door. It's been Torts to Vigneault to Quinn to Gallant to Laviolette to now Sullivan. That's not how you build a solid franchise. At some point, you have to stop the madness. And is Chris Drury that guy to stop that madness? I don't know. You don't see good franchises go from missing the playoffs for 5 years to making the conference finals to losing in the first round to making the conference finals to missing the playoffs. You don't see that kind of up and down results. You see a team that's good in the regular season, that makes the playoffs, that wins a couple of rounds, that is always pushing to get better, but is consistent at the end of the day. The sign of a solid franchise is consistency. When the Detroit Red Wings made the playoffs for a million years in a row, they were consistent. When the Chicago Blackhawks were in their dynasty, they were consistent. The same can be said for the Penguins. The same can be said for the Capitals. The same can be said for every team that's the Colorado Avalanche these days, and the Florida Panthers, and even the Tampa Bay Lightning. Even though they're down, they're still consistent. They make the playoffs. They're dangerous. The Rangers aren't that franchise, and they haven't been in a long time. Is Chris Drury that guy? I don't know. For all of his highs, the signing of Trocheck, the re-signing of Fox, the good management of his contracts, the jettisoning of bad contracts, the bringing in good solid players, the cutting bait of the young guys who you're sick of re-signing. That's the good, but then you see the bad, that maybe players won't want to play in New York. How he handled Barclay Goodrow, how he handled Jacob Trouba. Those sorts of things, those echo in the NHL. Players see that and they go, I'm not going to go to New York. Why would I go to a team and sign a long-term deal knowing my GM will threaten to put me on waivers and to send me down if I don't play ball with him, if I don't agree to a trade? Yes, there's accountability, but as a player, you just want someone who's going to buy in. You want what's the word I'm missing, but some comfort knowing that your GM won't pull the rug from out underneath you. And Chris Drury, the verdict is still out. We saw what happens in Vegas. That GM got a bad. Kelly McCrimmon gets a bad rap. He still manages to pull players because of no state tax, and Vegas is a fun place to play. Does New York still have that same luxury? It's one of the highest taxes in the league, other than the teams in Canada. I don't know. Is it a destination to play in New York? I think it might. But does Chris Drury have what it takes to build this franchise up into being one of the destinations in the NHL? Because right now it's not. And it's such a shame because it is such a great place to play. When I was there, when we made the conference finals in 2013, it was electric. The city was on fire. It was the same year as Vinsanity. Linsanity. Jeremy Lin. It was insane. It's such a sports-centric city, and the guttural roar when Madison Square Garden is on fire. And you drop the gloves, or Dan Girardi buries Milan Lucic, or we score in overtime. It is one of the most electric environments that you'll ever be in. And it's a shame the Rangers haven't gotten their act together and been a consistent team, because if they do, they will be loved. Look at Mark Messier in the 1994 team. That guy could do whatever he wants in that city. Adam Graves. Mike Richter. Those guys run that town because of what they did in that one season. So if I'm Chris Drury, I'm doing what I'm continuing to doing. I think he's doing a good job. And I hope he continues. I hope he finds a coach that he can ride with for the next 5 to 10 years and just get some consistency with this roster, because I'm sick of the up and the down with this team. I'm sick of wondering who's going to show up tonight. Which team are we going to get this week or this month or this year? Is it a potential Stanley Cup champion? Or is it a lottery team? I don't know. I want the Rangers to step up and be a good team year after year after year. I think the pieces are there. Can they deliver? I don't know. We'll find out this year. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate your support. We will be back later this week. We got a good interview. We got a couple big ones lined up, so stay tuned, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers, everybody.